there, my name is Ibukunalua and I'm a student at the Monk School pursuing my master's degree in global affairs. I've been reading your book, The Privacy Fallacy, and in this book you advocate for a shift from privacy law based on contract law into privacy law based on tort law. Now, given the importance of digital data in modern criminal justice proceedings, how would you address the potential harm caused if we deter data practices because of their privacy law implications? Secondly, considering the complex interplay between the information economy and justice, what are some frameworks you would propose so that we balance privacy rights and also maintain an effective criminal justice system and proceedings?
Hi, nice to meet you, and thank you so much for engaging with the book and preparing both of these questions, which are really interesting. The reason for which I love your first question is that it presses on an implication that extends from the book's main argument. So the argument of the book is limited to the information economy, which is the system in which companies make money not only from the money that we give them, but also from our data, which leaves the important point of what parts of this argument extend beyond the information economy? What parts of this argument extend to, for example, the use of personal information by the police? So the main commonality between the information economy and the way that the police would use personal information is the risks of consequential harms that we have. People can and have shown to be discriminated against when the police use their personal information. People can be subjected to data leaks, and most of the harms that could happen in the information economy could also happen in these data uses. But there's a fundamental difference, which is that when companies internalize all the benefit from data processing through profit, then they have different incentives than when a government or when the police uses data, which at least ostensibly is not only for their private benefit, but for the common good, as you very eloquently present in your question. And that changes the dynamic because the incentive alignment is not exactly the same. So the benefit of creating a system of accountability is exactly that it allows for all these socially beneficial data uses. It allows the police and it allows governments to use data to do things like combating crime, as long as they do it in a way that minimizes the collateral risks. And by not creating barriers that operate at the beginning about things that they're forbidden to do, but rather consequences when they don't do it responsibly, we address the dynamic of not having people be instrumentalized through these data uses, but allowing for exploration of the ones that are socially beneficial. Now, that leads directly to your second question, because while I presented this difference between government use of information and private use of information where the benefits are internalized, sometimes these lines are blurred because sometimes you have private actors that perform public functions. So, for example, Compass is an algorithm that is privately developed that is used in the criminal justice system in some countries to determine whether someone is at a high risk or a low risk of committing a crime in the future if given parole or bail. Predpol is one of the many algorithms that the police uses to determine police presence that is also privately developed. So while it's serving a public function, which is determining how much police there's in a neighborhood, it does have the incentives of the information economy, even if it's used sometimes in the police. So that fits to your question of what framework do we have to govern these uses of information? And I think what we need is a combination of balancing and boundaries. There's a long tradition in law that sees rights as something that puts a hard stop to collective interests, meaning that collective interests should instrumentalize some members of the population overriding their rights for the benefit of others. And to navigate this sometimes complicated distinction between balancing and stops, I think what we need to do in privacy is discerning between privacy losses, which are situations where information is collected or we don't have control over information, versus privacy harm, which is when we are directly exploited based on our personal information for private benefit. So privacy losses is something that should be balanced. We should balance privacy losses with gains in many other collective interests, but we shouldn't balance privacy harms. We should avoid them. We should avoid the police exploiting people. We should allow the police to collect information to be able to do their job. And that would allow for a way more tractable framework. It gives us a better sense of what it is that is being balanced. And for an example, we can think about how the discourse in Canada went with contact tracing apps a couple of years ago when the government was trying to fulfill this very important public function, which is reducing COVID cases. The discourse often revolved around the idea that contact tracing apps were balancing privacy with public health. What happens when we say balancing privacy with public health? Well, it seems like privacy should always lose because public health is such an important good socially, particularly in the wake of a pandemic, that privacy often ends up being disregarded. But a better framework to address this complicated question is unpacking what privacy means there. And by then, we can say, we are balancing privacy losses with public health. We are balancing how much personal information we collect about people with public health, but we should not engage in privacy harm. And that means we should only collect the information that we actually need for the app to function. We should, for example, use Bluetooth and not GPS, like the government ended up using in the Canadian version of the app. And by unpacking the meaning of privacy, by discerning data collection from the things that are actually harmful to people, we can produce social goods like reducing the number of cases in a pandemic, increasing the ability of the police to produce cases, while at the same time not allowing them to instrumentalize marginalized populations that can sometimes suffer all the cost if we don't do that. Thank you very much again for engaging with this, and I hope that I get to meet you on Wednesday, and I'm happy to keep talking about this whenever you would like.